minute. It's good to see a few of your faces. We're just going to take another minute, but we want to make sure everybody can hear me because this is the room microphone. I'm getting a thumbs up. Great. Excellent.
Can we see if we can hear them?
Let's see. Mike, would you mind doing a little sound?
I would love to, but I'm getting feedback from somebody on here. Did you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, Amy, you should turn off your,
It is
okay.
on both places, but I think it's because there's other people that are unmuted online. And if you can just mute them all.
Yeah.
Okay. We doing well for forum?
Even just in this room?
Yeah, we're close. Yeah.
And we've got 10, 11 if Andrea's here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
I see Michelle. Kristen. Elliot.
Yeah, they should be here. I don't, let's see. Yeah, I think we should get started.
Okay. Chair Rulon Miller. Pass it on to you.
Just sound check. Can folks online hear me? Frank, give me a thumbs up. Good. Okay. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board for the National Register of Historic Places. The date is May 20th, 2025. My name is Lindsay Rulon Miller. I am currently the chair of the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board. Our purpose this evening is to consider the nomination of properties to the National Register of Historic Places. As most of you know, the National Register of Historic Places is a federal list of those places deemed worthy of preservation. A nomination form has been completed for the properties that will be considered tonight. The nomination form has been sent to the review board members, and each member has had an opportunity to study it prior to this meeting. The owners of the nominated properties, local officials, and interested local groups have been notified of this meeting. All have been invited to send written comments about the nomination and to attend this meeting. Some of you may wish to speak about this evening about the properties. You are welcome to do so, and I encourage you to address yourself to the question of whether that property meets the criteria established by the National Register of Historic Places. These criteria are the standards by which the review board will evaluate the nomination. This evaluation is the board's only assignment. These criteria have been established by federal regulation. Copies of the criteria have been sent to owners of the nominated properties and to other parties I mentioned earlier. A description of the National Register of Historic Places program has also been sent to them. The nominations will be presented by a staff member. Persons in the meeting room and viewing the meeting remotely will be given the opportunity to comment. These comments should be limited to 3 minutes. If you are present, we ask you that you move to the podium to make your comments. The Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board will then discuss the nominations and a vote by the board will follow. Should a nomination be determined this evening to meet the criteria for inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places, The nomination will be forwarded to the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, Amy Spong. Should she agree that the property meets the criteria and that the nomination is in proper form, she will sign the nomination and forward it to the National Register of Historic Places office in Washington, D.C., where it will be reviewed once more. The process is a lengthy one, but it is calculated to subject each property to rigorous evaluation. Board members, if you plan to recuse yourself from a particular agenda item this evening, please make that known during roll call. As I take attendance, please introduce yourselves, briefly stating the role you fill on the review board and your particular expertise. So for roll call, we will begin with Board Member Anderson.
I'm Kristen Anderson. I'm one of the 2 architectural historians on the board.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
I'm Bethany Gladhill. I'm a member at large.
You, Board Member James. James, sir.
They were gonna come virtually,
Okay,
so I don't know if we've seen them yet.
we can come back. Board Member Lavasser. Board Member Lavasser, are you there? Here, we'll come back. Board Member Olson,
My name's Steve Olson. I'm a member at large.
thank you. Board Member Radford,
Casey Radford, I feel one of the historic architect spots.
you. Board Member Sanders.
Um,
Sanders?
board member at large.
Board Member Schulke.
Chris Schulke, I'm a Otter Tail County Historical Society, so I'm a public historian.
Thank you. Board Member Solomonson.
I'm Catherine Solomonson, and I'm an architectural historian.
Thank you. Board Member Stark.
John Stark, I'm an architect and I'm an historic architect on the board.
Thank you. Board Member Terrell. You see Michelle?
Sorry, Michelle Terrell, historical archaeologist on the board.
Got it. Thank you. Board Member White.
I'm Frank White and I am one of the members at large.
Thank you. Board Member Worcester.
Mike Worcester, I'm with the Morrison County Historical Society. I'm one of the historians on the board.
Thank you. And going back to Board Member James, have we seen? No. And did we miss Lavasser? Board Member Lavasser.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm Andrea Lavasser. I am the prehistoric archaeologist on the board, and I am retired from the Chippewa National Forest, where I was the forest archaeologist and the heritage program manager, and I managed about 3,000 archaeological and historic sites and about 40 buildings.
Thank you. Welcome. I am Chair Lindsay Rulon Miller, and I am a member at large, and I work at the Minnesota Historical Society in Capital and Public Art. So thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. We would now like to hear from Deputy Amy Spong and the SHPO staff regarding any necessary updates for this evening.
Thank you, Chair Rulon Miller. I was going to turn on my camera. All right. Great. Well, I've got a couple kind of pre-meeting reminders, but as Chair Rulon Miller said, this is actually our very first hybrid meeting for the State Review Board. So welcome those in person, those online. We really appreciate your patience this evening. It's a little bit of a pilot project, but we're hoping that we can, continue maybe at least an annual in-person meeting and get everybody down here. So thanks for those that are participating, whether you made it here in person or are online. Just a couple, and I also wanted to mention too, this is actually the very first State Review Board meeting that is taking place in the Department of Administration. Before COVID, we were at the Minnesota Historical Society. We had an agreement with them to continue our state review board meetings. And right when the pandemic hit was right when we had to find a new meeting location. So here we are. So I'm very excited that this is happening, and it's happening in May, which is National Historic Preservation Month. So welcome, everyone. Just a couple reminders, kind of meeting etiquette, because we are now testing out this new hybrid model. Reminder that for the folks in person, especially not to have side conversations, they will be picked up. The meeting is being recorded. And so just to be aware of that. And, you know, we want to make sure that everybody is still able to hear. And also for those who are joining us virtually, please remember to mute when you aren't speaking. I think that it lends to some of the feedback issues that we sometimes get. So a couple reminders there. I do have a few more announcements if you can hold on with me. Planning this hybrid meeting was no small feat. We had a wonderful tour before that for those of you who were able to join in. Unfortunately, we had to move it inside because of the weather. But we also had a meal together in the governor's dining room at the Capitol. But I wanted to really thank Lillian for her lots of planning and organization and all the approvals. We joked we had to get a lot of EORs, which are just approvals for invoicing and special expenses. So, and so we have Lillian here on our staff team. John, who is always consistent with his WebEx help and made a little more complicated by the hybrid nature, but he's a pro at this because we've already done this at SHPO with some trainings. And then we have Jenny Way and David Mather, our 2 National Register staff. So I just wanted to say thank you because I pretty much had to just show up and have a couple conversations, and I was constantly getting updated about how the planning was going. So that was really great. And I know they're not here, but I wanted to thank the consultants that provided great information on the capital area survey, both archaeology and architectural history, that has been happening since 2024. There's some really great resources online if you missed it, but I'm hoping they'll have more opportunity to talk about this really important survey work that's been happening. But the consultants were Liz Ailes from Hess Royce, and then Jeremy Nenow and Chris Moore from Nenow Cultural Consultants. So they did a great job. Let's see, I've got 2 announcements. Since our February meeting, we've had 2 National Park Service actions. So the Ole Carlson House in Dodge County was removed from the National Register of Historic Places. And then to end on a little up note, the First Baptist Church in Battle Lake was listed on the National Register. So those actions have been finalized. And then I also just want to close my announcement. I sent, hopefully you all did get an email. The last time in February when we were together, there were a couple of questions on federal preservation funding and some of the federal actions that have been happening. I did send you all kind of a call to action that national cultural resource organizations are doing. The FY25 funds are still frozen. And there has also been a proposed budget for FY26 that greatly reduces the Historic Preservation Fund account. Now that is a proposal, but if you did reach out to representatives or senators, thank you. I did get a nugget of good news just this afternoon from both Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar's office that they both signed the Dear Colleague letters for the Senate for the Historic Preservation Fund appropriation for FY26. So whatever everybody is doing by reaching out to folks, thank you, because both of our state senators. So if you have an opportunity to even thank them for signing on to that letter, that would be great. I don't have any numbers on any of our congressional members. It's just that the Senate staff responded back to back to me, so I know that they have signed on. So I'll end on a positive note because that was really some good news to get this afternoon. Any staff have any updates that I might have missed? Right. Oh, one final thing, we are going to add under other business for this evening's agenda. We need to establish a nominating committee for officers, for appointing officers. All right, turn it back to the chair.
All right, the next item on the agenda this evening is to review the minutes from the February 18th, 2025 meeting. Are there any corrections to the distributed minutes? All right, seeing no hands or corrections stated, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to
Chairman,
approve.
go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes from the February 18th, 2025 meeting.
And I would ask whenever we move or make a comment, if you could state your name, just so that on the record, we know who's saying it.
And this is Board Member Gladhill.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Board Member Schulke, second.
Schulke, second. Thank you. We will vote by roll call, starting with Board Member Anderson.
Board members Anderson votes aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Board Member Gladhill votes aye.
Thank you. Has Board Member James arrived? No? All right, we'll move to Board Member Lavasser. Board Member Lavasser.
Member Vaster says aye.
Thank you. Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Radford. Board Member Sanders.
Aye.
Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Board Member Solomonson.
Abstain.
Thank you. Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Board Member White, aye.
Board Member Worcester.
Board Member Worcester votes aye.
Thank you. And Chair votes aye. Minutes have been approved. Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to the presentation of nominations with some instruction. For our nominations this evening, we're going to use the following format. There will be a staff presentation of the nominations followed by a summary of correspondence received. At that point, I will then invite and call on those who would like to speak about the specific property. For those who are joining us virtually, we ask that you use the chat function, or if you are unable to access the chat, raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please do not use the chat function for any other purpose. For those wishing to speak, we'd ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. So our first nomination this evening is the Coyne School in Ginny, is it Cannabic, Coynebic? Cannabic, thank you, County, presented by Ginny Way.
Thank you, Chair Rwanda. Just gonna take a second to share my screen. Turn on my video. Someone said it might be a good idea. Seem to be able to do that. Oh, there we go. Right. Thanks, everyone. This is the Coyne School in Mora, Kennebec County. Andrea C. Pisa from Deco Cultural Services LLC is the author. Oh. I got it. In 1980, the Coyne School was listed in the National Register of Historic Places. To ensure its preservation, the school was moved in 1995. The National Park Service was not given the opportunity to approve the new location in accordance with National Park Service regulations. Therefore, the property was removed from the National Register in 2000. The Kennebec County Historical Society is now seeking to list the property in its new location. The Coyne School is a relocated country schoolhouse on the grounds of Kennebec History Center in Mora. The History Center grounds are largely rural in character, with dense woods to the north, west, and south,
and with limited residential development to the east, the views of which are generally shielded by stands of trees. In addition to the Coyne School, the history space includes the History Center building, 2 other relocated schoolhouses, a train caboose, and various structures for museum exhibits and maintenance. At left is the current school location. At right is its historic location, both indicated by arrows. Excuse me, please. We're supposed to be. Nope, sorry. I haven't done paper in a long time. It's like I'm going back. I can't seem to figure this out, so I apologize. The Coyne School is a 1-story cross-gabled former schoolhouse. It was constructed as a front gabled building in 1899, and a side gabled addition was put on the rear of the building in 1911, creating the current T-shaped plan. It is situated atop a poured concrete foundation that was constructed for the building in 1995 when it was moved to its current location. The exterior fenestration and materials were installed during the period of significance. At left is a map of the museum. The school is located west of the parking lot within the pink box. At right is a view of the Coyne School, camera looking northwest. In the late 19th century, frame country schoolhouses were constructed using machine-made materials. Schools employed balloon framing and were clad in woodlap siding and were often painted white, likely to complement the restrained neoclassical style popular at the time. At left is the Coyne School circa 1912, looking northeast in its original location. Note both construction campaigns are present by this date. At right is the east facade and the south elevation. In its current location, camera looking northwest. Interior spaces of these schools typically included boys and girls cloakrooms and a single classroom. Frame schoolhouses of the era, unhampered by foundations, indoor plumbing, or electrical systems, had the benefit of being easily moved to accommodate population shifts, and this happened fairly often. At left is the north elevation, camera looking southwest. At right is the west elevation, camera looking southeast. The construction of the schoolhouse was opened for bids in November of 1898. The contract was awarded to a carpenter named Eric Israel in the following month, with an expected completion date of July 1st, 1899. School District Number 8, as it was then known, reported an enrollment of 30 students by the end of 1903, which had risen to 61 by the end of 1909. At left is the entrance vestibule looking eastward. At right is the 1899 school building. Nope. Okay, so that was what we were looking at as I was reading. So we're going to pretend like I didn't have to go backwards. Kennebec County School District Number 8 was organized in 1881, at which time it was named the Calhoun School. It was established to serve the southeast part of Brunswick Township and was originally housed in a log schoolhouse. When the district was able to have a more permanent building constructed, John Frederick Swanson and his wife Matilda donated 1.5 acres of their farm, which was adjacent to the log schoolhouse, to be used as a school site. At left is the south elevation, camera looking north, and at right are the construction phases of the school. Deja vu. Mother of pearl. I say that, and it's sorry. The Coyne School continued to be used for educational and community purposes for the next nearly 6 decades. During the period in 1937, a basement was constructed for the school by the Works Progress Administration using plans prepared by architect Carl H. Bateau. Intended to supply space as a playroom, lunchroom, and kitchen, it unfortunately began to suffer moisture issues within just a few years, which compromised the usability of that level. At left is the 1899 classroom, current floor condition at north end looking west. Please note that. At right is the south coat room looking north. During the early 20th century, the schoolhouse, like most rural schoolhouses, was host to other needs of the township outside that of the school day, such as elections, religious services, socials, auctions, and entertainment programs. And it appeared to have been sufficient in space in this regard. By 1910, however, the school was woefully undersized for its primary function. The addition of the second classroom in 1911 provided space for existing students and allowed school district number 8 to be designated as a semi-graded school. At left is the pre-1911 building looking northeast. At right is the 1899 classroom looking west. Okay. The period of this significance for this property is 1899 to 1970. The level of significance is local. The National Register criteria are A and C. The areas of significance are education and architecture. The period of significance for the Coyne School begins in 1899, the year in which the building was constructed, and ends in 1970. In that year, the consolidation of the school marked the end of the use of the building by the school district. Because the Coyne School derives its significance primarily for architectural value, and it is a rare example of the property type, it meets criterion consideration B, moved properties. The Coyne School is an excellent example of a frame country schoolhouse of the early type constructed in the Kennebec County Common District, and illustrates the growth of District Number 8 and the transition from an ungraded to semi-graded district. In addition, it is a rare intact example of the property style. Because of these reasons, the Coyne School is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places and it's in its new location. There is no correspondence related to this property.
Thank you, Jamie. Great. Is there anyone joining the meeting virtually who would like to speak? Or with virtual folks? If so, raise your hand virtually, or if not, we can move on to folks that are in the room. Is there anybody in the room who is interested in speaking on behalf of this property? John, do you see anybody else?
No.
Okay. So seeing as there's nobody here.
Board Member Worcester, do you have your hand up?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Are there any other properties in the state of Minnesota on the National Register list which have been relocated, like this particular property?
Yes, although I'm not sure that I could name them for you at this point if I needed to. But relocation of historically movable properties is not unusual.
Any guess on the number or just,
I have no idea.
okay,
Need to
that's fine.
spitball
That's
for
fine.
you.
Thank you. I tried to look on the list online and that's not a item that you can easily filter out. So that's why I was curious.
So we'll close the public portion of the public comment portion and move on to the board to discuss. But in order to do that, may I have a motion regarding this nomination from the board? Board Member
Solomonson. I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
Board Member White, second.
Thank you, Board Member White. And is there any discussion from the board? Board Member Schulke, I see.
Yep, yes. This is, I mean, I'm wholeheartedly behind this nomination, but I kind of want to just to follow up on Board Member Worcester's comment, because we get this all the time out here. You know, the question of whether, you know, if you move a property, a National Register property, or if it's moved from its original location, it's not eligible. So, you know, Jenny, there is a criteria which I was not aware of on moved properties. Why is this property then was renominated for, well, a second time, even though it's been moved?
So I can't speak to Kennebec County's decisions to renominate their property. I presume based on the photographs of the floors, it has to do with funding to rehabilitate the building in situ. The reason why we felt like the property met criterion consideration B is because the National Park Service does allow for moved properties in certain circumstances. And if you think about how we consider the integrity of a property, you could consider those aspects of integrity that move with a building. So a property that's eligible under criterion C is more likely to be to withstand a move than those that are eligible under criterion A, where the association of the buildings around it or the space around it is specifically important to the significance. So in the case of a school, this school has physical and material integrity. It has integrity of design, which gives it integrity of feeling and association. The integrity of setting is compromised because it is no longer a traditionally rural school, right? It's not out in a farm field. It is now surrounded by other buildings, which is something that we need to take into consideration. Criterion consideration B allows moved properties that maintain their integrity in the new location to be relocated and continue to be eligible for listing. That tends to, as I said, lend itself to criterion C, although criterion A or B could also be true depending on exactly what the significance is. For instance, if you were to move a depot, we see depots that are moved fairly often. The National Park Service wants to see those depots maintained next to a rail line, right? Because that was their original function and therefore connected to the original significance.
All right, thank you, Jenny.
Do you have a follow-up question, Board Member Worcester?
I do. I'm just going to go off of what Board Member Schulke said, which, you know, we deal with that here too. And you hit the one example that I was going to bring up, which is a railroad depot, which I've heard more than one case of. So the other question I have then is the fact that this particular structure was moved onto the grounds of the Kennebec County Historical Society in that very wooded or, you know, setting, did that play a factor in this also, rather than say moving it into a park in the middle of Mora?
That's exactly it, yes. So my job, my role, and yours is to determine whether or not the new location has sufficient integrity to convey the historic significance of the property. It's the State Historic Preservation Office's opinion that the new location does. In fact, it is rural enough, right? The argument could be made for the park in the middle of Mora, depending on the size of the park and how far set back it is and how many trees there are and things like that. We hear the question about a moved property fairly often at the SHPO office too. Like all good questions, my answer is almost entirely, it depends. And so there's no reason to say that just because it's moved doesn't mean it's historic. Just like there's no reason to say just because it has vinyl siding, it's not historic. Like with this, there are not a whole lot of black and whites unless the property is non-extant. And then for me, it's likely not historic, but for David, it still might be.
That's a whole other story.
Whole other, don't do below ground. But yeah,
Thank you,
so
Jenny.
I would encourage you, when you get those questions, the answer is it depends, and they're welcome to reach out to me directly to discuss the old location and the new location. The National Park Service regulations allow both forgiveness and permission. You know, we talked about the Edna G last meeting. That was forgiveness. This is permission. I'm sorry, that was permission. This is forgiveness.
So Jenny, we moved the property twice and it stayed on the register. So there was a bridge in Sauk Center, moved up to Coochin County, and now is on the Gateway Trail over by Stillwater, so.
And that had to do with its engineering, right? It was intentional.
So you can even move twice. Don't get uncomfortable at once.
Once you've moved once, I mean, really, what's another move? I think I just heard about the birthplace of the Republican Party in Wisconsin that's been moved half a dozen times. So
Boy.
it's, you know, it depends. It's my favorite. I'm gonna get it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, so folks in the room, if you want to make a comment, we'll do the same like you did online. We'll raise hands and then I'll still keep an eye out there. I can't see everybody on that list, John, but you'll help me if somebody has
Yes,
their
I
hand raised. So Board Member Stark.
I was a bit surprised reading this thing that it was relocated, because it doesn't say anything up front and I hadn't looked at anything else before. So I don't know if that needs to be brought up earlier in the
Okay.
nomination, just so you're aware of it and prepared for the discussion later on.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make a note of that. It should be in the section 7.
Didn't we remove a school that was moved into a village yesteryear kind of thing just recently? So there, it does happen. It doesn't work. It's better to, this is hindsight. They should have asked Schipul before they did it.
Yeah, and again, it has a lot to do with where they were. So
Right.
somebody had a great, it wasn't building zoo. We're not supposed to call them building zoos. The physical museum experience that we talked about the last time, those properties were set in a way that they were supposed to interact with each other relationally. And that was very different than this being a little bit removed and surrounded by trees. So it makes a difference.
I think this rural enough setting feels right, that it would be right. I do have a couple other little things that, it talked about the basement being removed. And if you look at the plans, you can still see an outside door to steps going down. I assume that still exists. It doesn't directly say anything in there that should be added, that the existing basement access is still provided. And I assume it's going down to a crawl space now. Is that right?
I'm looking at Andrea Pease at the author
Right.
who's in the room.
And then it talks about, I love country schools. I had friends that went to them. Semi-grades, what is that? The reference?
So,
Is that like 1 through 8? Or is
well, I believe it means that they actually separate the children into 2 different learning experiences. So in a 1-room schoolhouse, you would teach kindergartner 1st through 8th. In a semi-graded school, you would perhaps separate them between the youngers and the olders. That's my understanding. Andrea Pease is gonna answer for
Yeah,
us. a little
I'm
bit.
sort of gonna answer. There's a footnote. I have totally lost track of which is which, but there's a footnote in the nomination that explains what graded versus semi-graded is.
Okay. It's a term I don't see very often.
Yeah.
In the schools I knew were like 1 through 6, 1 through whatever.
Yeah.
No kindergarten. Just a comment, with the repair of that wood floor, that they have to save the wood floor to repair it so it doesn't get torn out. Because that's a big defining character in that building. And the comment about poor site drainage leading to rot, but they put a new concrete building underneath, so is it moisture underneath, or? You can see it in the pictures, it drains towards grade, but I really wasn't understanding that as a.
So which concrete structure are you talking?
Well, it says the new foundation for the building is concrete when they moved the school, but a concrete foundation would keep the moisture out, but it could be in the crawl space coming up. And it's probably more mothballing techniques to store that building.
I see that Barb Barnes is on the list here and she might be able to weigh in. My recollection is that it's not a full basement. It's just the crawl space and then it's just kind of sitting up
Right.
on concrete, but it's not a full concrete basement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not
Is it-
answering your
wait,
question.
well, If water's draining towards a concrete wall, it's gonna go around the wall. Except what seeps underneath. I don't know how that was leading to the rot of the floor in that condition. There's something else causing that. Trap
Yeah.
moisture inside someplace.
Okay, yeah, they're having conditions assessment done.
Okay.
So I'll get that all figured out, but I'm not totally sure of how that moisture situation is
fine.
all working.
The
Okay,
other
sorry.
thing is the school is just very unique. I've never seen a school with that kind of T-shape with that addition on the back. So I like it.
It's very indicative of its history, which is nice. The construction is really showing us, you know, how the district progressed over time, which is very interesting. And as Andrea points out in the nomination instance.
Anything else?
Nope.
Board Member Gladhill?
In looking at it, I really appreciated the analysis of the other schools in the district and why this one was important. What I didn't catch from that is if the other two schools that are located on the site, are they National Register listed? Or would this be the only one on the site that is?
This would be the only one.
Chair Rula Miller, there is a note in the chat that came from the Kennebec County History Center saying it is a crawl space under the building. It has had water issues under the building since it was on its local site. So I'm wondering if there's something internally happening there, maybe.
It's probably
Springs.
sealed up so tight that moisture and,
Uh,
yeah, it's not vented.
yeah, so.
State Review Board can solve all your problems.
Any other comments about this nomination? Board? Don't see any hands in the room. Are there any hands on the call?
No, we're good.
All right. If that's the case, the motion before the board is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. So if we're ready, we'll vote by roll call. Those in favor say aye, those opposed say no. Starting with Board Member Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Aye.
You, Board Member Lavasser.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Olson. Board Member Radford.
Aye.
Board Member Sanders.
Aye.
Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Solomonson.
Aye.
Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Worcester.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passed. Thank you. Now we'll be moving on to our next nomination, our second nomination this evening, which is the Luther Memorial Church in Dakota County, presented by Ginny Way.
Thank you, Chair Rula Miller. So here we have the Luther Memorial Church in South St. Paul, Dakota County. Andrea C. Pisa of Deco Cultural Services LLC is the author.
Ginny, can you switch to
Nope.
presentation?
Very big. It's not one thing, it's another.
Exactly. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Luther Memorial Church is located on the northwest corner of 15th Avenue North and 3rd Street North in South St. Paul, the first ring Twin Cities suburb. The church is a combination school and church building designed in the mid-century modern style. It was constructed in 2 episodes, the first completing a school and fellowship hall in 1956, and the second completing the sanctuary and adjacent administrative spaces in 1964. The building incorporates multiple sections that create an irregular plan. At right is the USGS map of South St. Paul. Luther Memorial Church is noted with the yellow circle in the center. At right is the yellow, is the nominated property boundary. The yellow line represents the boundary and the red lines represent non-historic exterior wall surfaces. Between 1945 and 1975, Catholic and Protestant worship reform movements of the post-World War II era, particularly the liturgical movement, shared with modernism the values of reducing elaboration, creating an authentic and honest product, and ensuring that product resonated with and was relevant to contemporary users or potential users. A substantial percentage of these users were of the middle class socioeconomic class, who often perceived traditional styles as elitist and unwelcoming, and often cost prohibitive to construct. Churches therefore frequently determined modern designs to be preferable to traditional forms. Here is the entirety of the site. View from the, no, view to the northwest. Pretty sure. South St. Paul was growing as a result of suburban post-World War II boom. Luther Memorial Church was formed in 1953 through the merger of two South St. Paul churches. The construction of a new church building was both a catalyst for the merger and an immediate priority for the newly formed congregation. A location committee appointed 3 months prior to the finalization of the merger was formed to find and obtain a building site sufficient for the needs of a congregation numbering over 1,000 members. At left is the interior of what they called the temporary sanctuary, which is now the Fellowship Hall in 1956. At right is an overview. I'm sorry, that's really strange. Okay, so at left, we see the interior of the temporary sanctuary. At right is an overview of the site, what the nomination calls Unit 1 in 1956. In the fall of 1954, the architectural firm of Bergstedt and Hirsch was hired to design the church. Understanding their financial limitations, the congregation planned the construction in 2 units. The first unit was of an irregular plan in 3 sections. And though originally intended to have a stone facing, the building was ultimately faced in brick. The east section was the temporary sanctuary, which we just saw a historic picture of, a rectangular massing oriented on a north-south axis with a low-pitched asymmetrical roof. At left, we see the east elevation of that temporary sanctuary looking southwest. At right is the south elevation of the education wing of Unit 1 looking northeast. To accommodate the sloped site without putting any of the sections underground, the first unit was connected by ramped floors at the interior. Here is an overview of the property, camera looking northeast. Where fenestration is present, it is aluminum, and non-masonry walls are covered with Cemesto panels. Cemesto panels are a product of the Colatex Corporation that consist of fiberboard made from sugarcane waste faced with asbestos cement. At right is the west elevation of the education wing, camera looking southeast. At left is a different section of the education wing, camera looking east, southeast. The interior of the temporary sanctuary exhibited exposed steel arches and a half wall of stone that had been extracted from the quarry on the property. This wall served as both the facing for the raised platform where the choir sat and a backdrop for the altar. The church building committee was deliberate in the selection of the modern design, the result of which is a building whose style is not diluted by historical references or attempts at hybridization. At left is the Fellowship Hall, camera looking south. At right is the north wall of the Fellowship Hall, camera looking northwest. Here are 2 interior spaces of the education wing. At left is the commons, camera facing north. At right is the library, camera looking west, southwest. The design of the permanent sanctuary, or Unit 2, was roughly conceived in the 1950s, although the final design and construction did not occur until 1963. The result was an approximately 40-foot tall brick-faced sanctuary space with subtle curved corners and an undulating north wall constructed of textured precast concrete panels. At left is the sanctuary looking southwest. At right is the campanile looking west. The prominence of the concrete, a material not characteristic of traditional exteriors, additionally speaks to the style, as does the general absence of ornamentation on the church exterior and the expanses of glass at the entrance. At left is the main entrance looking west. At right is the narthex looking south. In the 1960s and 70s, various Christian denominations began to consider the congregant's role in worship services differently. Eventually, a philosophical dichotomy, transcendence versus immanence, emerged. The concept of immanence tended to be conveyed in modest, well-lit spaces, included the simplification and minimization of decor, and were centrally planned spaces where the worshipers were acutely aware of worshiping in community. At left is the sanctuary, camera looking east. At right is a similar view in 1964. Designed by Lloyd F. Bergwist of Bergstedt, Wahlberg, and Wold in 1963, the interior of the permanent worship space was intended to accommodate 476 attendees and designed to emphasize community worship, or as the dedication program phrased it, the quote, feeling of worshiping in a family or group, end quote. At left is the chancel looking northeast. At right is the choir and organ area, camera looking southeast. During the post-World War II era, worship performers were also discussing the art adorning church interiors and finding modernist artistic expressions fulfilled the desire for, quote, honesty and authenticity, end quote. As their style matured, a practice of architects partnering with various artists and artistic consultants to have an aesthetically and functionally integrated church emerged. Steel sculptures throughout this building were designed by a local student and graphic artist, John Bakersfield. At left is the sanctuary looking west. A sculpture by Bakersfield is visible at the center of the photograph. At right are the steel sculptures on the east chancel wall, camera facing east. Bakersfield also collaborated with August Mulder in the design of the most striking artistic aspect of the sanctuary, the faceted stained glass windows. Mulder was a pioneer of the mosaic art technique of faceted stained glass by incorporating an epoxy resin in lieu of concrete to hold the glass. Each window contains numerous symbols associated with one of 7 overarching themes: education and fine arts, healing arts, communications, commerce, labor, food production, and government and public service. At left is a photograph of the entirety of the north wall, camera facing north. At right is a detailed photograph of the stained glass. Outside of the sanctuary, the majority of the ceilings throughout the 1964 construction are acoustic tile. Walls in the pastor's offices and main office lounge and conference rooms are wood paneled with carpeted floors. Most other utilitarian spaces featured concrete block walls and vinyl asbestos tile floor. The main corridor, including the narthex, incorporate brick walls and quarry tile floors. At left is the hall ramp to the kitchenette, camera looking west. At right is a lounge and view to the kitchenette, camera looking northeast. When considering their new space, the church building committee was deliberate in the selection of modern design, the result of which is a building whose style is not diluted by historical references or attempts at hybridization. At left is the pastor's office in 1964. At right is the same space in 2025. The period of significance for this property is 1964. The level of significance is local. The National Register criterion is C. Areas of significance are architecture and art, and the property meets criterion consideration A, religious property. The period of significance is 1964, the year in which the permanent sanctuary was completed. Because its primary significance is derived from architectural and artistic distinction, Lutheran Memorial Church satisfies criterion consideration A. Lutheran Memorial Church is a highly intact example of the mid-century modern religious architecture. The design incorporates faceted stained glass windows of the church, which embrace an avoidance of realism. For these reasons, Lutheran Memorial Church is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. There is one piece of correspondence for this property. Pastor Patrick Joyner writes that he and the congregation support the nomination of Lutheran Memorial Church.
Thank you, Jenny. John, is there anyone who's ready to speak from online?
I do not see any hands up.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye if anybody in the list would like to speak.
Yes.
Raise your hand or indicate so in the chat. Is there anybody in the room who would like to speak about this nomination? See anybody? Give it a minute. Online. All right, if not, the public comment period will close. In order for the board to discuss, may I have a nomination regarding this, or a motion regarding this nomination? Board Member Stark.
I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination of Lutheran Memorial Church for listing on the National Register of Historic Places.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Board members, at large Sanders, seconds.
Thank you, Board Member Sanders. Any comments from the board or discussion? So please raise your hand. Board Member Stark?
Couple questions. The stained glass is marvelous in this, and I couldn't tell by the photos, is there a storm window on the outside of that would help protect it or not?
There's it's like a plexiglass,
Plexiglass, something or other.
mhm,
Okay,
on the
and
outside, yeah.
that's good to know. It does help from vandalism and hail and stuff like that, but it also needs to be installed so it doesn't cause problems. So there's a national preservation brief just to make sure that they've got it done right. And then in the 2017 remodeling, I don't think you mentioned anything about accessible restrooms, but it looks like those were changed. I don't know if that was that time or.
I also don't know if that was at that time. Are we talking about the education, in the education?
It was something that was changed that wasn't mentioned, and you
Okay,
did a really good job picking up a lot of stuff in there. I just wasn't sure on that one.
okay.
I've done a lot of those. That's why.
Okay.
And then in the sanctuary lighting, I couldn't tell what the original lighting was. If it looked like it was a surface mounted, but the ceiling was brighter in that. And it's just something because that's a significant space to mention something, if there's anybody who can answer that question. Another question would have been about acoustics, because modern churches, that was a big thing to talk about acoustics, and if there was anything in the planning that was important. The organ looks really small, so I don't know if their music program was really big. But even if the organ was made by a significant organ builder, that's something to make a note of. Other than that, I think it's a good nomination, so thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Great. Any other, Board Member Solomonson?
I do think this is a very well done nomination. And there's a detail I have a question about. So this relates to the stained glass windows, I think. So you talk about there being this sort of undulation in the exterior, and somehow that's linked to the stained glass windows.
It's the concrete actually sort of, the concrete in between each stained glass window kind of flares out. So
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
and then the stained glass is sort of a little bit recessed
Okay.
behind, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I think I saw hand Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question, I guess, about the elephant in the room, which is how a modernist building in Minnesota cannot be acknowledged as making reference to Saarinen's Christ Church Lutheran, which I think this building and pretty much all of them do. They have a big cross on the chancel wall. This one has a campanile. It's got the same shape. It's got a slanted ceiling. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I know from even discussions with my dad, who was a seminary student, when that building was new, they all went to Christ Church Lutheran. Everybody knew about it. And they went to hear the preaching and they went to see the building, and it was just a thing. And I'm sure it was true of the architects in the Twin Cities as well. And so I wonder if there was anywhere any discussion about or any appropriate place to make an acknowledgement of what I think are very clear connections. I don't think they could build a modernist building in the Twin Cities without making reference to that one. So I don't know, Andrea, maybe this one's more for you than anybody else, but maybe, Kate wants to jump in on that, or.
Sure. I think it would make sense to add a reference to that, because the connections are really strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a larger context than what's in the nomination, which kind of springboards off of, and that context is not to do with this church. It was written before, so kind of springboards from Christ Lutheran, but I could certainly, yeah, take some of that and work it in.
I think just a very few sentences. It's not going to be the focus of the discussion because from
Right.
what I understand from the nomination, it's not something that the architects at the time were citing themselves. Clearly, we all understand it to be something that would be influential in a given, you know, that the architectural historians in the room are feeling like the connection is visible, and it's sort of remiss not to, but let's not talk about many paragraphs.
A sentence or two.
Yeah.
Board Member Sanders.
I found this nomination absolutely fascinating. And when I first went through the list, I thought, well, I'm gonna look at the photographs first. I've learned to do that, look at the photographs before I start reading stuff. I looked through the photographs and I thought, this is so 1960s. The grade school that I grew up in, I'm not talking about the architecture, also the art. And but the grade school I grew up in was built in 1956. And they added around 1963, they added the middle school. Now, this school I went through ninth grade was identical to this. And of course, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. So, but this, the art that I see, and then the discussion of the symbolism, I found just wonderful. I just thought this was such a great history lesson, but also of the art and architecture of the 1950s and 60s. I was an art student in the 1960s. I see the art that we were doing in the 1960s on the walls. You know, I know the men and women who were instrumental in building this were the post-war people. They were my uncles and aunts and parents. I know how interested they were in modern art and talked about modern art and strove towards modern art. But I just thought it was so indicative of the 1960s that before I even read the nomination, and then I got into this wonderful discussion of the symbolism, then, which I really thought was, this is probably my favorite nomination so far in my time.
Christchurch Lutheran congregation has done a wonderful job being stewards of that building. It really is amazing. I mean, when we visited, I was like, wait a minute, have there always been ramps? And they're like, oh yeah, it's great because they haven't had to make some of those accessibility issues. You know, and they certainly have modernized it as they've needed to, but they've done a wonderful job making sure that the architecture and the art are both well integrated. And I love that we can do both here.
I think this would be a good place to take art students and look at the art.
I'm sure the pastor would welcome a phone call.
Board Member Stark.
I think there's the fact that they built the gym or that section first, the education, because it's so indicative of that time period that the communities were really growing after World War II. The church I go to did the same thing. And Ed Sovic did our sanctuary in 64, same year, but we were 55. But that's what they did because it had to serve the community first. Then they add the sanctuary and added on to it. So there's a lot of it around here. So it's good to see this.
Board Member Radford.
So I can understand, and maybe other people had the same question too. Why is it only the one date as the period of significance and the earlier date is also not captured in that?
That is an interesting question, and we did go back and forth on the technicality of that. Often with construction, the dates of often with criterion C, the dates of construction are considered the complete period of significance. But in this case, what happened in the earlier unit is not actually indicative of either the architecture or the art as the significance is being described. It certainly is present, and you wouldn't have the sanctuary without the education wing, but we felt that the significance of the property was really embodied and enveloped in that unit too, the sanctuary, and therefore that was the moment in which the property gained this historic significance for which it's being listed.
Thank you.
And National Park Service, for me, it's 6 to 1, half dozen the other. If they want to have 2 dates as periods of significance, that would be fine for me. But as we were reading and discussing the documentation, that's the technical side we came down on. If they changed, I'll let you know, but it certainly encompasses, and we wanted to be sure that the documentation and the character defining features encompass the entirety of of that span.
Thanks.
I think we have a hand, Board Member Worcester.
Yes, thank you. This may seem like a strange comment because I do have a question also, but it's nice to see that these mid-century modern buildings, which in the perception of a lot of folks are very much blah buildings, are getting recognized. You know, that particular building reminded me of the congregation I attended as a kid. But one of the issues that struck me, and maybe it's not a big issue, but is maintaining the environmental controls within inside a building like that. Those always seem to be a struggle. Has that been an issue? And maybe Andrea can address that. Just making sure that these buildings can be maintained both internally and externally in that way.
To my knowledge, they haven't had any issues with that. I don't know what kind of practices are in place for going forward. And I don't know, I see Maureen is there. I don't know if Maureen has any who is with Luther Memorial. I don't know if she has any insight into that, but no, I wasn't informed of any of those types of issues. That's working on it.
I've seen that in buildings of that era, that becomes a roadblock to making improvements, is because they can't improve the environmental systems within them. So especially like with moisture, dealing with moisture and things like that. But again, just so many will look at this building and go, why are you putting it on the register? There's nothing fancy or special about it, but that's not necessarily the point. You know, it shouldn't be a European style cathedral to be considered for the register, at least to me.
I would vehemently argue with that person. This is neither fancy.
Oh, I've tried too, but trust me, the finer points of what we look at don't get. It's hard for people who just simply look at the visual to understand beyond that, and that's understandable. That's human nature.
Yeah, they absolutely gloss over and wonder why I'm talking with my hands, but I do.
Are there any other hands up on the video? I don't see any board members. Any other comments from the folks that are on hybrid from home? Any other comments in the room? No? All right, so the motion before the board is to recommend that Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the Luther Memorial Church for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And now we will vote by roll call. Those in favor say aye, those opposed say no. Board Member Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill.
Aye.
Board Member Lavasser.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Radford.
Aye.
Board Member Sanders.
Aye.
Board Member Schulke.
Aye.
Board Member Solomonson.
Aye.
Board Member Stark.
Aye.
Board Member Terrell.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Worcester.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Now we will move on to our next nomination, our third and final nomination for this evening, which is the Winter Shell Site in Carver County, presented by David Mather.
Thank you, Chair Rulon Miller. It's in the wrong order. Share. Thank you all. This nomination is for a site called Tuki Hassan Oyanke, also known as the Winter Shell Site. It is an ancient shell midden and campsite on the Minnesota River that dates to the late woodland tradition. The Dakota language name was selected by the Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community who partnered in the site investigation, and it means mussel shell site. And I apologize for my poor pronunciation of the Dakota language. Thank you, Board Member Sanders, for pointing me in the right direction. The site was discovered just last year following a flood and was the focus of a recovery effort in October, November. And I did want to point out at the beginning, it's somewhat unusual to nominate a site to the National Register so early in its investigation. But I did so in this case because its significance to American Indian history and archaeology was so immediately apparent, and also in hopes that historical designation would support efforts to stabilize and protect the site going forward. Sorry, I'm pushing the wrong thing. There we go. So this is how the site appeared in the late summer of 2024 when it was noticed by river scientist Tyler Winter. And you can see the concentration of mussel shells near the water, the white material. That's what drew his attention. This was the aftermath of a flood that eroded part of the riverbank, and which was followed by a period of low water, a dry period. And the water was lower still by the time archaeologists visited the site in late October. And the view here is to the east from the Minnesota River channel. And here's an image of the site during the recovery effort. This is in the floodplain of the Minnesota River. The mussel shells are visible by their white color at the left side of the slide. And the archaeologists are conducting a terrestrial LiDAR scan of the site area. And I wanted to say also, I'm very grateful to Jennifer Rankin, who's the Director of Archaeology at the Minnesota Historical Society, because she very quickly mobilized people and resources to do a recovery effort. This is not a situation that occurs very often, but the site was clearly very significant. And so we did this in a kind of a team of archaeologists and other specialists from the Historical Society, from the State Historic Preservation Office, Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community, and Hamline University. The view here is to the northwest from a high bank that's above the site. And this is the level of kind of the surrounding landscape and the county road, and which is itself within the very wide glacial age floodplain. Page, there we go. And the site is normally underwater. And the recovery was a very slippery activity at times. The camera view here is down. Get my fashionable boots. If it's when it started to rain even a little bit, it was absolutely a mudslide, and very kind of exciting. One very interesting aspect of the site, I thought, was that there's this iron-rich mineral that leaches from the riverbank at this location. And it's liquid as it comes out, like kind of at the water line, but then it hardens as it dries into kind of a mineral concretion. And in some cases, it helped protect the site by hardening the soil. And so, like around the shell midden, you could see that there was like a higher level that wasn't washed out by the flood because of that iron being there. We don't know whether it was there historically, like when the site was in use. It may have been, and we don't know whether it's culturally significant. I mean, a lot of natural pigments would be, but we collected samples of it in this case for Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community to consider amongst themselves, and for further look in the archaeology lab during the site analysis. So to focus on the shells, there we go. We laid out a 1 meter grid over the shell midden, and you can kind of see the white pin flags differentiated from the white shells, perhaps. And so that was over about a 50 meter area. And within those 1 meter squares, We mapped and collected the shells and other artifacts that were on the surface. And here, the photos with the river in the background are oriented roughly to the west or southwest, and those with the high bank visible are to the east. And here's a view to the west, meaning the one on the left, the larger image during collection of the mussel shells. So the area behind the archaeologist had already is within the concentration of shells, but the shells there had already been collected, and we were working across meter by meter, and so she's bagging a concentration of burned earth and charred plant materials that was in the approximate center of the concentration of shells in the shell midden, and what it appeared to be was the place where glowing hot rocks that had been heated elsewhere on the site, and we could see those features also still in place. The rocks were superheated and then piled in this location, and then probably the mussels that had recently been collected kind of piled up around them to steam them open to help to make it a lot easier to get the meat out of the mussel. And you can see on the smaller images on the right, there's like a black line, and anyway, some of the burned, discolored shells. And so there were thousands of mussel shells, just an incredible amount of material, and it was important to keep as many of them on site as possible. And so malacologists from the Department of Natural Resources, that means mussel shell specialists, led by Bernard Siteman, spent several days with us identifying the species in the field. And this was, I have to say, a really fun thing to do. And I am a nerd, and I had my copy of Field Guide to Freshwater Mussels of Minnesota with me and asked Bernard to sign it for me, and I got mud on it. It was a really good time. He mentioned there's a new edition of that book coming out this year. Maybe it's out already. I don't know, but when I'll have to get it and have that one signed as well. And you can, in the poster that's produced by the DNR, you can see the great variety of freshwater mussels in Minnesota. They're really amazing animals. And here's two more views across the site. At left, we are looking upstream toward the northwest, where bison bone and fire-cracked rock features were found. And at the right, we look downstream to the southeast, and they're in the distance, but you can kind of make out a group of archaeologists are wearing orange vests. They're near the shell midden in the picture on the right. And so the mussel shells were amazing, and obviously the kind of the focus of the site investigation. At least 22 species identified so far. There's more identifications yet to do, so that number may increase. But there were also really interesting, significant artifacts of other types, including, I mentioned the fire-cracked rock features. So those are themselves really significant and integral to the interpreting the activities at the site. But there's also debris from making stone tools. There was pipestone. There was a variety of animal bone and other environmental evidence, including the little muskrat jaw in my hand there. That was fun. And there was a really kind of amazing sample of late woodland pottery, including these diagnostic pieces. And so the overall site analysis, like the laboratory analysis, has not really happened yet. So these are that's why I have all these field photographs. And so we'll be able to say a lot more about these once they can be actually studied. But they are clearly diagnostic. And so analysis of that material and radiocarbon dates will allow us to refine the date range of the site considerably. You can see the cord marking on the large rim shirt on the left, and then decorations on the pieces at the right. There's charred residue on the interior surfaces of most of these sherds, which itself is datable and provides other opportunities for research. The shells, animal bones, and plant material from the midden are also datable. And so there's a good potential here for radiocarbon dates from a wide range of materials, which is helpful because usually like mussel shells and other aquatic resources tend to skew the radiocarbon dates a little bit too old. So comparing them with terrestrial dates like the animal bone would kind of help balance that out. And most of the shells are unmodified, other than being steamed open. But some of them clearly were modified beyond that. They're either cut, you can see on the left, or pierced like on the right. And then the burned ones from the center of the feature are in the center photo. And so all of the shells from the midden are artifacts because they were collected and moved and processed and then left at the place. But it appears that some of them at least were used for other pieces. And so probably for the modification, if people were making jewelry or tools or other types of things, probably what we're seeing here are the ones that where, the manufacturer wasn't going right. And so those pieces were discarded perhaps, and the finished pieces were taken away. So the Woodland Tradition Multiple Property Documentation Form identifies the historic context for this area as the Southeast Minnesota Late Woodland Complex, and that is a context that is pretty poorly known. That in itself highlights the information significance of this site because we now have a well-investigated site that connects with it. The estimated date range for the complex is 500 to 1150 CE, Common Era. And so in the property types, in the property types defined by the MPDF, this is a resource procurement and processing site because people were collecting and processing mussels, freshwater mussels in this case. It's only the second such site to be nominated to the National Register. And it's described in the nomination. This site meets the registration requirements outlined in the MPDF, including the presence of diagnostic artifacts, patterning, and identifiable resource use. I should say also, Board Member Terrell wrote the other nomination, which is submitted at the same time as the MPDF, and that was for a spring fishing site up in Beltrami County. So for now, the period of significance is that defined for the historic context, which is 500 to 1150 CE. And as mentioned, it'll be likely possible to refine that in the future for a potential update of the nomination after further study at the site. This is the first mussel midden to be studied in detail in Minnesota, so that itself is kind of exciting. And for that reason, it has statewide significance. Also, some of the materials came from non-local areas, but also are within the state. It is significant for its information potential in archaeology and Native American heritage under Criterion D. And I love this photo because I think of it as showing us being on the cusp of underwater archaeology, hanging out over the bank. The archaeologists are mapping surface artifacts with the yellow grid. The view here is to the southeast. And to conclude, the winter shells or the winter shell site is worthy of preservation as an exceptional example of a resource procurement and processing site within the Southeast Minnesota Late Woodland Complex as defined by the MPDF for the Woodland Tradition. As the first shell midden site with detailed investigation in Minnesota, this site warrants protection and provides a foundational context for identification and study of similar sites throughout the state. And I thank you.
Thank you, David. We'll move on to the public comment portion. Is anybody in the room interested in speaking on this nomination? Or online? There's a hand. I see Neil. Neil, please introduce yourself and you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Neil Feakin. I am the Executive Director for the Minnesota Valley Trust, which is the current owner of this site. I'll just start by saying we strongly support this nomination and maybe provide a little context about the trust and how we operate. We were formed about 25 years ago with the goal of supporting the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, which is a unit of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Department of Interior. Our primary mission has been to acquire and protect land within the ownership boundary of the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, which is how we came to acquire this site. Typically, what we do is we will acquire a piece of property and then ultimately transfer it over to Fish and Wildlife Service ownership. This particular property remains under ownership of the trust, although we do have a management agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So anything we own, they manage like it's their land. But I offer that from a protection standpoint. We certainly desire to have this site protected to the fullest extent possible. And if that would mean expediting transfer over to Fish and Wildlife Service or keeping it in Minnesota Valley Trust ownership or another option, we would be completely open to those conversations, and in fact would benefit from some consultation, whether from this board or from the State Historic Preservation Office. So I would hope that we could have some future conversations about the ultimate kind of disposition of this land. But again, we strongly support this site and would like to do everything we can to keep it protected as much as we can. So thank you.
And thank you, Neil. We greatly appreciate the support from the trust and throughout the investigations and since, and absolutely look forward to talking further. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to speak? Nothing. If that's the case, we will close the public comment period. And in order for the board to discuss, may I have a motion regarding this nomination?
Remember, I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for listing in the National Register of Historic Places.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll
Board
second.
member.
Board member Gunn.
Board member Gladhill. Seconded. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Any comments from the board or discussion? Board member Olson.
So how do you manage a riverbed that just gets uncovered? Doesn't it naturally cover up again, or what?
That's an excellent question, and we don't really know the answer. I mean, so one of our concerns was, well, how do we protect this thing? I mean, one of the first questions we had was, literally at the beginning, is it an archaeological site? Obviously, pretty quickly, yes, it is. And then, is it intact? And despite being uncovered by a flood, it had incredible integrity. You could see the different features, you could see, activity areas, you could see all that stuff. Normally we can't, but so that was, I guess, a plus side to being partly uncovered in a flood. But then how do you protect it? And so, there's a fair amount of work that's gone on to figure out how to stabilize riverbanks and things, to protect sites elsewhere. Would that work here? We don't really know. We had some really good conversations on site with, Tyler Winter, the river scientist who found the site. He came out, was very interested in it. And so he, had some ideas about it. And also a geologist from the Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community was talking about the same thing. And they both pointed out that just immediately or short distance upstream, the river comes around a tight bend, and that part is eroded more than this part. And so they said that when the water's high, it comes around that bend with pretty high energy, and then it starts to dissipate. They both said that, it's not harming the site in any way to be underwater if the water is not actually eroding. The site, I think, is normally underwater, and generally that is good for archaeological preservation, especially for organic remains. The drying out is kind of harder on it. But and so what they suggested as a way to protect this one might be, reasonably straightforward in that just protect. They thought maybe even timber barriers, slightly upstream from the site would disperse the energy of high water, so it wouldn't be hitting the site area you know, as hard as it would elsewhere, maybe that would be enough. But the long answer, or rather the short answer, is we don't really know. I think hopefully there can be more study of this. This is a really good archaeological case study to figure out some of these issues, because we focused on the recovery on what was exposed because it was vulnerable, but we could tell that there were more artifacts that went deeper. We could tell there were more artifacts out in the river channel as it was then. But we were focused on just kind of that little sliver that was exposed at that time.
Yeah, the cottonwood trees have trouble with bridges, and so I can imagine cottonwoods being trouble for such a site as well.
Yeah, there were down trees that had washed out, kind of some in the site area and some in the channel. Both of the scientists who, you know, just on the on-site conversations pointed up at the high bank, because there was floodplain forest up there, and the bank was eroding back into it. And they said, like, there, you know, it would be, you know, the idea would be to remove some of that timber along the eroding bank, because once the trees get undercut, they fall, and then the roots pull more out and it causes more damage. And so, you know, they both said, you know, maybe, you know, if such a thing could occur, maybe the trees up there would be, you know, good material to armor, you know, part of the exposed bank with, to try to deflect the energy of the water. Maybe that would be enough. It's hard to say.
Dr. Terrell's got her hand up.
Yes.
Board Member Terrell?
Let me see if I can start my video here. I just wanted to say that I strongly support this nomination. I had an opportunity to see some of the shell that was collected in the lab, and that alone was impressive, knowing that it was just a sample of the site as a whole. I had a couple of comments, one of which David has already addressed with his opening slide, which was the property name. I hope that Tuki Hassan Oyanke will be the primary name for the property, and that the winter shell site will be on the form as another name along with the site number. I was very uncomfortable with the site being named after an indigenous site, being named after the discoverer. And then I had a question for David. Pipestone was not pictured in the document, and I understand the cultural reasons for that. But I was curious if the pipe bowl was also of the late woodland style, and perhaps that could be described in the text. And then I do hope that as the analysis is completed, that there will be an updated nomination.
Thank you. Yes, I think it would be appropriate to update this nomination, and all of the artifacts, including the pipestone, will be documented in the report. You know, we had conversations, immediately, pretty much after the site discovery, with Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community, and about, you know, the cultural sensitivity of the pipestone, and so the plan has been to, you know, photograph, document, and then leave those artifacts at the site, as well as the bulk of the shell material. And so we had to adjust plans a little bit, partly because of weather, and partly because once we were underway with the investigation, we realized, you know, people unknown to us had been there and had moved some artifacts around, and we were afraid of it, you know, getting looted. And so, but anyway, those types of materials will return. As far as I could tell, I mean, the pipe bowl is, you know, appears to be late woodland. It was in the shells, and so it seemed to be contemporary with them. And there was a fragment of a pipe bowl, and there was another piece of pipestone that was cut, but it was just a blocky piece. And so it seemed that both the pipe, presumably, and then other pipestone material had been, you know, people who were using the site had brought that there.
Board Member White.
So I have a question to follow up on Board Member Terrell's. Who determines the name? Who determines what this is going to be called then?
So when we were on site, I asked Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community if they felt that a Dakota name would be appropriate, and if so, what that would be. And so, and they, you know, considered over a period of time, And so that was one thing I wanted to mention to the board. We have the Dakota name that they recommended. Now, it was not, we did not know it yet when the draft was completed and shared with you. So with the board's permission, I will, amend the final version that we send to National Park Service with the Dakota name. And I agree that it should be the focus. And so, archaeological site names named when they're named by archaeologists happen. Sometimes they're named for geographical features. Sometimes they're named for landowners. We were kind of at a loss about what to call this initially, and so I was very appreciative of Tyler Winter, the river scientist who reported it, and he was very interested in it. So that's why I called it the Winter Shell Site. But I like I think it's very important for native sites to have native names whenever possible. And so, but those names appropriately should come from native communities.
I thank you for that, and I really support what Board Member Terrell said and what you just also said. Again, to use the Dakota name.
Thank you. Board Member Sanders.
Yeah, I'd check on the meaning for those words, because my understanding that what that means is not mussel shell. It means allied community.
Oh, okay.
Oyake is community, and the other word means allied or friendly.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But I could be wrong, but that's my interpretation of what as I understand it. So I'd check with that to make sure that it means mussel shell.
Okay.
Just I'd ask Leonard if that's what it does mean, just to make sure. I've got some other comments. I've noticed that bacteria created ooze at several sacred sites now. It is I talked to Bob Larson, had a long conversation this morning about that, and it's probably a medicine. It could be used for sunscreen. It also is a paint, and it could be used in ceremonies, particularly funerary ceremonies. And it also, they're now using nano, that when it dries, it turns into a nanoparticles of iron oxide. It's bacteria created.
Yeah, okay.
And it just flows through the water. So it's probably always been there. And there's iron in the soil, and usually they're indicators of when you've got groundwater up. It's flowing groundwater underneath is indicators of that. But so it's probably already been there. But it also could be interpreted as the blood of Mother Earth. So it could be a very sacred thing. Bob talked about how mussel shells were processed. He talked about them being, he's experienced, Bob Larson's a Dakota elder from the Lower Sioux community. He talked about it being put on hot rocks to make them open up. And then once they're taken out, they're boiled. So that may mean the pottery was used to boil the.
Nice.
And he talked about hot rocks going into the pottery to boil them, and so that's part of the process. Really interested in that piece, the fragment of like a little piece of tablet, the pipestone tablet.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to see how that's done, because I'm always seeing that at places, and I think they're related to the tablets, and they're the tablets that have petroglyphs.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
And I think that there's something going on with the ceremonies. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
See, there's other step to it. I don't want to take too much time. But we could talk about this another time. Bob and I are going to go visit the site, Bob Larson and I.
Good.
And we're going to continue having the conversations with elders about, there's a symbolism that goes with mussel shells. Particularly the Mississippians, made them a lot of gorgets out of it. They did a lot of artwork with it. The dual bivalve thing has some meaning. And there are petroglyphs at Jeffers that I think are associated with that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff going on there. One comment I'll have, I really strongly will encourage any nomination of any indigenous site But the nominations that I've seen so far typically are still heavily archaeology. And I don't know what's appropriate, but it would certainly be nice to see more an indigenous involvement in the nominations and just for the education, because understanding these sorts of things and involvement and reaching out and working with knowledgeable people. But then again, you need to develop some protocols, what can be shared and what can't, but there should be some sort of, the discussion I had, this is just with one elder, you know, but the discussion, I think there's rich knowledge out there. And I certainly would be nice to include more of that in future nominations or figure out how to do it. Because I think it is
Yeah, I
problematic.
absolutely agree. And yeah, and I tend to not want to nominate sites under criterion D alone. I mean, criterion D is information, you know, archaeology can apply to all 4 criteria, but a lot of people, you know, archaeologists especially just kind of default to criterion D. In preparing this one quickly, it was the easiest thing to focus on to hopefully get it listed. But I do think in an update, you know, traditional cultural significance of the site, you know, could be expressed better under criterion A, and you know, potentially other things as well. Like I absolutely would like to consider that as we go forward. In terms of, you know, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but in terms of the point you were making about Native involvement in the nominations, I think a really good place to start would be the MPDF that we have from the, I think, mid-90s on earthworks, burial mounds and earthworks,
right?
Which is, I have used for nominations of, you know, of mound sites because that's what we have, but it is kind of painfully only archaeological, and it does not consider the significance of, you know, ancient earthworks and cemeteries as sacred architecture and as landscape architecture and other traditional cultural significance. And I think I would love to see that updated with from perspectives of Native communities. But I agree across the board with archaeological nominations.
And I think your nomination was wonderful. And
Thank you.
appropriate. But I, you know, and the ones that I've talked about and that I've seen in the past, well, they still sound like archaeology. You know?
Yeah.
A lot of jargon and stuff like that. They're kind of cold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it'd be nice to bring in some more of this, or that stuff. But I think that it is going to take some work to figure out how to do that appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and also get people to talk about it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, those are big questions.
But
big
I
questions.
thought that's really great insights into that site. You know, in our discussion this morning.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sanders. So Board Member White, you still have your hand up. Do you have another question, comment? Just
Oops,
taking it down.
apologize, sorry.
All right, are there any other comments or questions from the board? Yep, Board Member.
Like a
Miller.
really ill-informed question, so I apologize. I'm interested in working with the mussel specialists and Ellen. Would all of the 22 varieties of mussels been gathered in that area, or is there any indication it would have been brought to the area?
They were species that were or are native to the Minnesota River. So I mean, one of the things about that I think is so interesting about the freshwater mussels is that they're incredible environmental indicators. Like some of them are very environmentally sensitive, and so a lot of the native species are extirpated from that riverway because it's one of the most, if not the most, polluted waterway in Minnesota. And and from what Bernard Siteman was talking about was that from the species of mussels that are known from the Minnesota River, including at this site, he would interpret the historical, original water quality of that river as being more like the St. Croix River is today, which I think is kind of stunning just from the image that I have of the Minnesota River. And so, but I think they would have all been pretty local just from the logistics of taking them long distances and I can't prove that, but it just seemed, you know, fairly reasonable. And so how far of that stretch of river, I don't know. And, you know, and how long that took, I don't know. I think about that a lot. You know, the mussel shells and the other artifacts, I mean, and features, it all seem to me to be a single event, you know, not like a moment, but like maybe a week or maybe, you know, it's like a single activity. You know, everything seemed related to everything else. It wasn't, you know, a lot of times in archaeology, we're getting little snapshots of all these different time periods that might be separated from by hundreds or thousands of years. And here it was all kind of laid out right before us. And so I think that's part of the significance. You know, there very well could be older components below that we could not address that. So, Board Member Sanders.
Does anybody look for any mussel beds locally right there? I know they're probably hard for them to live there with all the pollution, but is the environment there for them? It's sort of, I know they like to hide in mud.
Yeah.
Muddy bottoms, but they will, you know, they like to also be among the rocks, but they like a nearby place to hide. It'd be interesting to see if there's any that habitats close to that, whether somebody could look the mussel people. But
yeah,
the other comment I forgot to tell you is that the fact that there are pocket gopher bones there may be significant timing. For timing, they're used in a ceremonial springtime soup.
Oh,
so if you
nice.
find those at a site, that may indicate they were put there because you only eat that in the spring.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah. That was, there was one, I didn't have a picture of it, but one mandible of pocket gopher. And, you know, and a lot of times when we find those, you know, it's like they of course they dig. So it's hard to tell sometimes if they're kind of background fauna or if they're
maybe not
archaeological. But in this case, it was in the shell midden along with, there was deer bone and there was the muskrat bone. And so it seemed to be associated like the other animal bones were associated.
And why was it called a winter shell site?
Oh, after the name of the person who found.
I wondered about
that. Yeah. So Tyler Winter was the river scientist who saw the shells initially and reported them as potentially interesting. So that's why. But it does sound like the season, so that's confusing.
It confused me, but
yeah,
and I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Yeah. Presumably the collection would have been done in warm weather, so you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I wonder about how. I mean, but people probably canoes and wading and I don't know what. But
I thought it also looked similar to the Lake Benton site with the pottery and the broken up buffalo bones.
Oh, nice.
I thought it was really similar to that.
And I wondered if some of the pottery might be like that, and I'm not certain about that.
That'd be cool.
But anyway, once we can actually get the analysis done, that will.
You're also welcome to join Bob and I if we go visit.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I've been meaning to go out this spring. I'm actually curious if it's completely underwater again or not, or anyway, but I had hoped to have an opportunity before the meeting to get a current image and wasn't able to do it. But I would love to do that.
Cool.
Any other comments from the board? Anybody online? Any hands?
No.
All right, so I understand that a suggestion for staff would be to update the document with the Dakota name and clarify the meaning before it moves along.
Certainly.
However, we can still vote on the motion, which is to recommend that the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer approve the name now Winter Shell Site for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. So those in favor say aye, those opposed say no. Board Member Anderson?
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gladhill?
Aye.
Board Member Lavasser?
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Olson?
Aye.
Board Member Radford?
Aye.
Board Member Sanders,
Aye.
Board Member Schulke,
Aye.
Board Member Solomonson,
Aye.
Board Member Stark,
Aye.
Board Member Terrell,
Aye.
Board Member White,
Aye.
Board Member Worcester,
Aye.
and Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. All right, so this concludes the presentation of nomination section for our meeting. And I'll just move into the other business, which is to select a nominating committee for officer positions on the State Historic Preservation Review Board. So we have 3 officer positions, which is chair, vice chair, secretary, and they are each 2-year positions, 2-year terms. You can serve up to 2 2-year terms. And you could serve in all 3 2 times if you want. So our task today is to form a nominating committee of either 3 or 5 people. We'll start with a minimum of 3 unless we have so much response, we can go to 5. So by the end of this evening, we'll need 3 board members to form a nominating committee. Your job will be to meet. You can do that however you like, but you can just email, you can meet, whatever. And you will be contacting board members to determine their interest in those 3 roles for the SHPO board. And then you will have a slate of 3 individuals that will be recommended for during the August 2025 meeting. So today we'll have the nominating committee. 3 of you will work in the meantime to have a slate of officers that we will then vote on during August. I will continue to chair August board meeting, and then the newly elected officials will begin their terms during the November meeting. Okay, so now I would like to open it up for volunteers for the nominating committee. And you can be on the nominating committee and also serve as one of the officers or not. It doesn't preclude you from being an officer. So are there any folks that would like to volunteer? And fair warning, if we do not have 3, I will be calling on 3 of you. So folks online, you can raise your hand or just say me. Anyone in the room?
It's not a heavy lift, I will just say. You can meet virtually.
Look, there's a hand. Well, there's a
Board Member
hand.
Worcester has his hand up.
Board Member
yes.
Worcester, would you like to
Fine, you
be on the
guilted me into it.
Okay, we have 1.
Thank you, thank you.
You have 1.
Oh, for goodness sake, I'll help Mike.
Schulke. And we need a 3rd.
The room to balance it off.
The pressure is heating in the room. I'm just.
Tension's growing.
We need 1 more.
I'll do it.
Okay, so we have board member Radford, Worcester, and Schulke for the nominating committee. And so board member Anderson and Solomonson are currently serving in the other 2 roles. And I'll just say, for anybody who's interested in chair, it's been wonderful. The SHPO board is very supportive. Typically, what I do, at least, you can form your own path, but I usually meet with the SHPO staff the week before, and we go over, there's a script, we update things and just talk through anything that's peculiar about that meeting, and they super supportive, and I come to the meeting, and the commitment has been,
I would say, except for meeting time and your normal reading time, I set aside 45 minutes.
Yeah.
A quarter to speak to Chair Ruano.
So I would encourage whoever is interested to take a shot at it, but that's not up to me. It's up to the nominating committee. Thank you all.
Question on that.
Yeah.
Having been vice chair.
Yeah.
That's even easier. So that's. You do have to fill in on spur of the moment to run the meeting if the chair can't do it. What does the secretary, just the minutes that we see?
No.
Or-
I'm the secretary right now. Lillian does everything.
Well, the minutes are officially recorded and presented in writing. They're addressed to the secretary, but all the board votes and reviews them, so.
And essentially the secretary would fill in if both the chair and the vice chair are not available.
I think none of you are supposed to travel on the same plane at the same time. Limousines, you should separate your limousines.
None of us should probably be traveling on any planes right now.
Is there a designated survivor?
All right, well, thank you. Thank you all for volunteering. I appreciate it. Going forward, if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to staff. Ginny's been very helpful. I can also help answer questions if you like.
And I'll send an updated contact list so you have everybody's emails.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so beyond that, are there any other business items that staff would like to address?
I have just a quick one. We have 2 additional SHPO team members that I just wanted to introduce that helped out tonight. We have Katie Manthe-Mimbach, who joined us last August. So she is one of our newer staff members working in the environmental review program. And then Leslie Coburn, who is one of our environmental reviewers as well, and has been here longer than Katie. So it's nice that they were able to come and help out and see our first in-person meeting since pre-pandemic. Yep. It's good to see you all.
Welcome.
I would like to say that if anybody has questions or comments, or not questions, but comments about the hybrid meeting experience and whether or not you might be interested in May again next year for a hybrid experience, that would be great. Or if you have strong feelings about always being in person, whatever, please feel free to reach out to staff and express those. We're in a whole new world now. So, again.
Yeah.
The technology.
Yeah, we even talked about maybe if we do continue a meeting in May, an in-person meeting in May as kind of our annual, thing, or with a retreat type component to it, that maybe it's just all in person once a year, so there's another option there too, that we don't do hybrid, so we'd love to get your feedback either way.
Well, I like these in-person meetings because you guys are not as scary as I thought we were.
Wow. Very scary.
Yeah, and there, when you think about it, there's only a few board members that are on the board from before the pandemic. So we have a lot of new members that this is their first meeting too. So thank you.
Without any other updates, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. This concludes the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.